Hey everyone, welcome back to Revenge Reloaded. The second the Ocean View Resort and Spa gleamed like a beacon of opulence on Maui's premier shoreline, with towering windows, endless pools, and suites kicking off at $2,000 nightly, the sort of spot where elite pretended superiority over all, even their kids. I knew my family's belittling would peak. What they had no clue about was that I'd quietly amassed an empire, and when Mom air-kissed with disdain, quipping about my last season's dress, my reveal would shatter their facade forever. My name is Sophia Matthews. I'm 32 now. And like a fool who'd learned the hard way, I thought this family gathering might differ. She glanced at my simple black ensemble from the prior collection, but still pricier than most rides. Hello, Mother. Lovely to see you too. She air-kissed my cheek, meticulous not to mar her flawless makeup. Behind her, my sister Victoria sprawled on a luxe couch, scarcely glancing from her device. We were just chatting wedding plans, Mother went on, waving at the pile of glossies on the low table. Victoria's event here next month will be the season's highlight. The mayor's attending, you know. Of course he was. Victoria was wedding Bradley Harrington III, scion to the Harrington hospitality dynasty, the same one owning this haven plus scores across the seas. How charming, I said evenly, settling in. Isn't it? Victoria finally peered up, her diamond band catching the glow. Dad's reserved the whole place for the week. Only elite guests, naturally. Speaking of which, Mother's gaze sharpened. Where are you lodging, dear? Surely not here. This spot's, well, too pricey for your circumstance. My circumstance? Code for ditching the family firm 5 years back to launch my own venture capital outfit. In their view, I might as well have turned beggar. Actually, I started, but Victoria interrupted. There's a quaint motel in Lahaina, she said sweetly. Far more your pace these days, right, Mother? Mother nodded wisely. We must be practical about these matters, darling. Since you insisted on pursuing whatever it is you do, venture investing, I supplied. Yes, that, she dismissed. Well, we can't expect you to uphold our lifestyle. The suites here begin at $2,000 nightly. That's likely your monthly lease in that cramped New York flat. I checked my watch. 10:58 a.m. spot on. The lobby doors parted, and a crew of builders in high-vis vests began rigging gear on the sands right before the resort's vaunted seafront vistas. What on earth? Mother rose, frowning. Victoria, darling, ring Bradley. This won't do for the wedding shots. Victoria was already dialing. Bradley, sweetie, there are workers obstructing our view. Can you, what? What do you mean you can't halt them? I smiled, drawing my tablet. Perhaps I can clarify. Clarify what? Mother demanded, watching in horror as more gear rolled in front of the prized Outlook. What could you possibly know about this? I pulled up architectural blueprints on my tablet. The Sapphire Spire project. 60 stories of ultra-luxe condos breaking ground today, directly before the Ocean View Resort. Victoria dropped her phone. That's impossible. Bradley's kin owns all the beachfront land. They did, I corrected, sliding over docks. Until Azure Developments snapped the final lot 6 months back. Astonishing what you can achieve when no one's eyeing the poor daughter. Mother snatched the papers, her perfectly manicured hands trembling. Azure Developments, but that's my company, I finished. Well, one of them. The one set to erect the most exclusive residential spire in Hawaii, right before your flawless wedding spot. The lobby had gone eerily quiet, the only sound being the construction equipment starting up outside. Mother's perfect posture had crumpled, and Victoria was staring at her fiancé like she'd never seen him before. Now then, I continued, pulling out more documents. Let's discuss the actual situation. The Harrington Hospitality Empire is $900 million in debt with major loans coming due next month. Loans that Azure now controls. This is blackmail, Bradley finally managed. No, I corrected. This is business. Something your family used to understand before you started relying on your name instead of actual financial sense. Through the windows, we could see the first pieces of heavy equipment moving into position. The resort guests were gathering, pointing, and taking photos. The tower will take 2 years to complete, I explained, pulling up the construction timeline, during which time this resort's ocean view rooms will be worthless. No more $2,000 rates. No more exclusive weddings. No more pretending this is the most prestigious address in Maui. Mother leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. All this time, while we thought you were struggling, I was building an empire, I nodded. One that doesn't depend on last names or social connections. Would you like to see Azure's portfolio? We own properties across 3 continents. That tiny New York apartment you mentioned. I own the building, all 60 floors of it. Victoria was still staring at Bradley. Why didn't you tell me about the financial problems? Because he was raised the same way you were, I answered for him. Taught to maintain appearances at all costs. To pretend everything's perfect even as it all falls apart. My phone buzzed. Updates from my development team. The press release goes out in an hour, either announcing Azure's strategic partnership with Harrington Hospitality or the construction of Sapphire Spire, which will permanently alter the landscape of Maui's most exclusive coastline. I looked at Bradley. Your choice. He slumped in his chair. I need to call my father. Already done. I smiled. He's waiting in my office upstairs. The presidential suite, actually. Turns out I can afford it. Mother's face went through a fascinating series of expressions. You have an office here. Azure bought 10% of Harrington's public shares last year, I explained. Enough for a board seat in certain privileges. Victoria, you might want to come, too. There are some inheritance clauses you'll need to review. As we walked toward the elevators, I could hear Mother on her phone frantically calling her society friends to update them on her daughter's surprising success. The same daughter she dismissed as a failure just 30 minutes ago. The construction noise outside had reached a crescendo. Tomorrow it would either stop entirely, marking the beginning of the Azure-Harrington merger, or continue for 2 years, a daily reminder of what happens when you underestimate the wrong person. Oh, and Mother, I called over my shoulder. About that motel you recommended. I bought it last week. We're turning it into a boutique hotel. The rates will only be $1,000 a night. In case you need somewhere more suited to your budget after the merger. The elevator doors closed on her shocked expression, and I smiled. Sometimes the best view isn't of the ocean. It's watching people realize exactly who they've been looking down on all these years. And karma, like real estate, is all about location, location, location. The funny thing is, the moment I dropped that bombshell, the lobby froze. But to grasp why, you need the full backstory on what those folks had been pulling for years. Mom didn't just miss me when she rang. London. 2 weeks prior, she'd texted pics of sky-high vacation costs, hinting she and Dad couldn't swing it unless I pitched in a tad. Just this once, kicked off every question. When Dad needed hip replacement, I wired cash. When brother Ethan blew his cards on his Genius app venture, I helped consolidate. When the AC failed and the mortgage lagged, I covered, and Mom posted spa selfies the next week. I live in a shoebox in London. I eat prep at home. I trek to work in downpours, yet I was bankrolling DoorDash and premium subs in a home on another continent. This time, before booking my ticket, I paid heed. I archived every Venmo, every PayPal, every, thanks Han, will repay when settled. I also spotted something else, an email from the lender with my name on a home loan I didn't recall co-signing, 'cause years back they'd added me for better terms, and I'd been plugging gaps since. So while Mom wept on FaceTime about how the kids miss you so, little Tim keeps asking for Aunt Claire, I sat on my cot in London, eyeing my app, realizing family only treated me as kin when a payment loomed. I almost nixed it, almost told her to sort it herself, but a fresh idea struck. If they were keen to haul me across oceans to use as a gratis sitter and walking wallet, I was ready to show what happens when I quit the role. I booked my flight, but also consulted with a money pro, downloaded 3 years of logs, and had a basic form prepped on a legal site. So, standing on that San Diego stoop, while Ethan chuckled and Mom decreed my nanny duties like fact, I wasn't the drained, jet-lagged daughter they knew. I wheeled my bag in, let the kids romp around my legs, and trailed them to the kitchen where their glossy itinerary lay on the counter like a shiny vow. Resort snaps, flight times, family bundle, bolded. Mom tapped the pamphlet and said, "See, this is why we needed you home, sweetie. The kids stay with you. We'll have a proper break. You always say we should self-care." I eyed the resort name, spotted the card digits on the open confirmation email on her phone, and felt that switch click again. They thought I'd flown home to slot into their plan. I'd flown 10 hours to do what I should have years ago. So, I smiled, asked Mom to gather all in the dining room so we could review a few things pre-departure, opened my laptop on the table, and pulled up the stack of digital proofs that would turn their family escape into the last time they saw me as a free resource. Dad sat at the head like it was a board meeting. Mom hovered by the island, gripping that printed itinerary. Ethan scrolled his phone, half-tuned. Mia and Logan spun on the tile. I slid my laptop closer, angled the screen so all could see, and said as calmly as possible, "Before you head out, we need to discuss money." Ethan groaned. "Claire, seriously, now?" Dad muttered about timing under his breath. Mom gave me that hurt look and said, "Sweetie, we've been so stressed. Can we not fight before we leave?" I didn't raise my voice. I just clicked to the first folder labeled Thompson Household and opened a spreadsheet. Every row dated, color-coded, brutally clear. "Last April," I began, "you rang because the mortgage lagged 2 months. I wired $1,500. In July, Ethan's venture costs maxed. His card. I sent $3,000. When the furnace broke, $1,200. When Dad's SUV needed brakes, $800. When the gas bill was overdue, $400 here, $500 there. Every month for 4 years, there's something." I scrolled slowly so they could see the totals build, highlighting entries as I spoke. "This excludes the Netflix Fam, Prime, Spotify Premium, HBO, the random Zelle 4 emergencies that are always timed with sales or outings." Ethan straightened, color fading as he spotted his own "I'll repay next month" memos and notes. Mom's hand flew to her mouth seeing her text screenshotted beside deposits for fuel to see Nana, followed by pics of her at a fresh cafe. Dad's jaw clenched, spotting the PayPal for hip rehab copay, then receipt for a new grill the same week. "This isn't right," Mom whispered. "You're making us seem awful." I shook my head. "I'm not making you seem anything. I'm showing what happened." Then I scrolled to the bottom, to the bolded row. The total sat there, big and undeniable. "In the last 48 months, I said quietly, I have funneled this house over $80,000. The room went dead silent. Ethan blinked hard. Dad stared at the wall. Mom kept whispering, "No, that can't be. That can't be." Like repeating would alter the math. I reached into my bag and pulled a thin stack of printed pages, slid them onto the table beside their dream resort itinerary. "This," I said, "is a simple agreement. It's not a lawsuit. It's not me dragging you to court. It's just a record that all of you acknowledge you owe me this money and will start paying it back. Even if it's gradually, $100 a month, $200, whatever." I had it drafted using a legal template. My advisor reviewed it. "All it says is that this," I tapped the 80,000 on the screen, "was not a gift." Dad finally snapped out of his shock. "We are family," he barked. "You don't put your family in debt like that." "What? Are you going to sue your own parents?" I met his eyes. "The family doesn't hide a home loan in their daughter's name and call her when the payment's late. The family doesn't spend her money on getaways and lunches. And then tell everyone she abandoned them." Mom flinched like I'd slapped her. Ethan grabbed the pages, skimmed the first paragraph, and his voice cracked. "This is insane. I can't pay this back. None of us can." I leaned back in my chair. "I know, and I'm not expecting you to. Not all at once. But I am done living in a world where you pretend you're victims and I'm some selfish career girl overseas. If you ever tell a neighbor or a cousin or Facebook that I left you with nothing, I will show them these numbers. I will show them every transfer, every bill I cover. Every time you chose Starbucks over the electricity bill because you knew I'd bail you out." Mom shook her head over and over, whispering, "No, no, no way. You wouldn't do that, Claire. You wouldn't humiliate your own family." I shrugged. "I'm not planning to as long as you stop lying." Then I clicked to another tab, the one with their resort reservation confirmation. The familiar logo filled the screen along with their names, dates, and a little note at the bottom with the last 4 digits of the card on file. "My card and about that family trip you're so excited about," I added, my voice still calm. "You might want to sit down for this part." Dad frowned. "What are you talking about?" I pointed to the status line under the reservation number. "Cancelled. 3 days ago. I called the resort and the airline," I said. "Since the bookings were made with my card and my account, I had every right. The package has been refunded. The flight credits have been moved. So, when I told you at the door that I wasn't babysitting while you went on vacation, I closed the laptop halfway, just enough to see all their faces at once. What I meant was there is no vacation anymore. Not without me. Not without my money. Not ever again on my dime." Dad lurched up from his chair when he saw the word cancelled like he could intimidate the screen into changing. "You had no right," he snapped. "Those are our tickets." I didn't even flinch. They were bought with my card from my account with my money. I said the right was all mine. He opened his mouth to argue, but I was already clicking to the next window. And that brings me to the house we're sitting in right now. On the screen was an email from the bank with both our names on it. Gary Thompson and Claire Thompson, co-borrowers. Dad stared at it, his face draining of color. Mom whispered, "Claire, please, not this. We told you it was just paperwork." I swallowed the familiar ache in my throat. "You told me it was a formality," I said. You told me it wouldn't affect me, but I've been the one covering short payments on this mortgage for years. Every time you forgot a bill, it hit my credit, too. I clicked a button and a small video popped up in the corner of the screen. My financial advisor's face appeared, framed by a home office in London. We had spoken before I ever got on the plane. "Hi, Claire," she said. "Is now still a good time?" I turned the laptop slightly so my parents could see. "Perfect," I said. "You remember my family situation?" Dad hissed. "Who is this?" I answered without looking at him. "This is the person who helped me understand exactly what being a co-borrower on your mortgage means and what my options are now that I'm done bailing you out." The advisor introduced herself politely, then got straight to the point. In calm, measured language, she explained that as a co-borrower, my credit was tied to this house, that missed payments and constant shortfalls were hurting me, and that I had the right to go to the bank and request to be removed from the loan. In practice, she continued, that means the lender would require the remaining borrower or borrowers to qualify on their own. They might have to refinance, or in some cases if they cannot meet the requirements, the property may need to be sold to satisfy the debt. Mom shook her head. "You can't do that," she said, her voice trembling. "We can't afford to move. We can't afford a higher payment." The advisor's voice stayed gentle. "That is between you and the lender, ma'am. What I can say is Claire is not obligated to keep her name on a loan that she is not truly benefiting from, especially when she is the one making up the difference." I thanked her and ended the call, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. The room felt smaller, like the walls were inching inward. Dad rounded on me. "You're going to make your own parents homeless. Over some numbers on a screen?" I looked him straight in the eye. "No, I am going to stop letting you gamble with my future while you act like I owe you my entire life. If you can afford resorts and plane tickets when you think I'll be here to babysit, you can afford to sit down with a bank and figure out how to pay for your own house." I reached into my bag again and pulled out a folded letter. "This is my formal notice that I'll be stopping all automatic payments related to this property. I said the bank will contact you directly from now on. I'm also closing the joint checking account Mom convinced me to open just in case there's an emergency." I air quoted the words without meaning to. Mom made a choked sound. "But that's where the grocery money comes from." She said. "That's where we pay utilities. How are we supposed to manage all this?" I took a breath, steady and slow. "The same way every other adult in this country does," I replied. "With your own income, with your own budgeting, with your own consequences when you overspend." I opened another tab showing the monthly auto drafts I had set up over the years. Mortgage supplement, power, internet, streaming bundles, grocery deliveries, car payment, top-ups. All of them had my name next to the word payer. "As of today," I said, my cursor hovering over the cancel button for each one. "These stop. You will get your own bills in your own names. If they're late, that's between you and the companies, not me and my credit score." Ethan finally spoke up, panic rising in his voice. "Claire, you can't just pull everything away at once. At least give us time. I'm looking into more hours. I'll sign up for more delivery shifts. I swear. Just don't screw us like this." I turned to him. "You're 34 years old." I said. "You have 2 kids. You should have been doing that years ago without me dangling in the background as a safety net." He stared at the table, jaw clenched. For a second, I almost softened. Almost slipped back into the role they had written for me. The fixer, the quiet helper, the girl who would cry in the shower and then open her banking app and make it all go away. But then I remembered the way they had laughed at the door. The way Mom had said, "You'll babysit," like it was a line item on their to-do list. And that softer part of me shut right back down. I hit cancel on the autopays one by one. Confirmation emails pinged my phone. Mom's breathing got faster. Dad sank back into his chair, staring at nothing. "This is cruel," he muttered. "You're punishing us." I shook my head. "No, I'm finally stepping out of a role you all wrote without asking me, and I'm giving you the chance to be honest about what you can actually afford without hiding behind my bank account." I closed the laptop and stood up, my legs shaky, but steady enough. "After this," I said, "if you decide to tell anyone that I abandoned you, just remember I have every receipt, every bill, every transfer. I'm done being the villain in the story you tell other people to make yourselves feel better." I picked up my suitcase and quietly added it. "You wanted a real vacation. Maybe this is it. A vacation from pretending I'm your built-in solution to every bad decision. Let's see how you handle life without that." Dad finally snapped when he saw me rolling my suitcase toward the hallway. He jumped up so fast his chair scraped the tile. "If you're walking out after this little show, don't bother coming back," he barked. You're not welcome in this house if you're going to hold money over our heads. Mom reached for my arm. Gary, stop. She just needs to calm down. We can talk about this, she said. But she didn't actually move to stand between us. Ethan stared at the floor, silent. I paused in the doorway, hand on the handle, every muscle in my body shaking. A part of me wanted to drop everything, apologize, say I'd figure something out like I always did. Instead, I straightened up and said, "You're the one who decided my value here was measured in what I pay for. If I'm not welcome without my credit card, then I was never really welcome at all." Dad jabbed a finger toward the door. "Get out," he said. "And don't come crying to us when London chews you up and spits you out." I almost laughed at that. A short surprised sound. London wasn't the city that had been eating me alive. This kitchen was. I stepped outside, the California sun hitting my face, and pulled the door shut behind me. No one followed. No one called my name. The only sound was Mia and Logan arguing about a cartoon from the living room. Blissfully unaware that their vacation had just evaporated, I ordered an Uber and dragged my suitcase to the curb, feeling more homeless than I actually was. The driver loaded my bag into the trunk and asked, "Where to?" I took a breath and gave him the address I had never given my parents, a high-rise in downtown San Diego, 15 minutes from their quiet little street, but a completely different world. 6 months before, after one too many midnight money transfers and guilt trips, I had used my savings and my steady UX salary to put a down payment on a tiny one-bedroom condo. I told my family I was just thinking about coming back to the States someday, but I had already signed the papers. The plan was to move in slowly, quietly once I figured out how to disentangle myself from their finances without blowing everything up. Tonight proved there was no gentle way to do it. When the Uber pulled up in front of the glass building, it felt surreal. I swiped my key fob, wheeled my suitcase through the lobby I'd only seen twice, and rode the elevator up to the 8th floor. The condo smelled like fresh paint and new carpet. Not like anyone's cooking or stress or desperation, just empty. Mine. I dropped my suitcase in the middle of the living room and stood by the window looking out over the city lights. For the first time in years, my phone wasn't buzzing with, "Can you send something until Friday?" Or, "If the card got declined, can you fix it?" I opened my banking app and went through the last few things I still paid for that weren't in my name. The Family Disney Plus canceled. The Hulu bundle was canceled. The Spotify family account, the shared cloud storage, the random Apple charges for games the kids downloaded. Canceled, canceled, canceled. Each confirmation email felt like cutting a string that had been wrapped around my ribs for a decade. I brewed myself a cup of cheap grocery store coffee in my brand new, barely stocked kitchen, and sat cross-legged on the floor because I didn't even have a couch yet. In the quiet, without my mom's constant sighing or my dad's TV blaring, the doubts rushed in. What if I'd gone too far? What if they really couldn't keep the lights on without me? What if I had just turned into this selfish, ungrateful daughter my dad always warned me not to be? Then I remembered how my mom had opened the door like I was a maid showing up for a shift. I remembered Jason joking about the kids wiping their snot on me while they all laughed, assuming I'd just slide into place and make their plans possible. And underneath the fear and the guilt, something else settled in my chest for the first time in years. A thin, quiet layer of peace. They were going to feel the impact of my absence, no doubt. The bills would come, the late fees would stack, and the life they'd built on top of my invisible paycheck would start to wobble. But tonight, in this tiny, echoing condo, there was no one to save but me. I took a sip of coffee, opened my laptop again, and watched as the new emails started to roll in from the bank, the utility companies, the streaming services, all of them confirming what I already knew. For the first time, my family was on their own. The first sign that my decisions were actually hitting them didn't come from a phone call or a text. It came from Facebook. About a week after I moved into the condo, my friend Emma sent me a screenshot with a simple message. Have you seen this? It was my dad's profile, his name right there above a long dramatic status about how some kids forget who raised them the second they get a fancy job overseas, and how he and my mom were left with nothing right before Christmas. He wrote, "Our daughter flew in from London and decided money was more important than blood." He had written, "Pray for us." Underneath were comments from people who had known me since I was in braces. "So sorry, Gary. That is awful. Kids these days do not understand family. You gave her everything and this is how she repays you." One woman added, "If she will not help, maybe set up a GoFundMe. We will share it." My stomach twisted like I had swallowed ice. He was doing exactly what I had warned him not to do. Turning himself into the helpless victim and me into the cold-hearted villain. rewriting the entire story for an audience that had no idea how many times I had paid their bills in silence. For a minute, I paced my tiny living room, phone in my hand, fingers hovering over the call button. I almost drove back to that house. Almost begged him to take it down. Almost offered to reinstate one of the payments just to make the humiliation stop. The old version of me, the one trained to fix everything, was clawing at the inside of my chest. Then I pictured the spreadsheet on my laptop. I pictured the email tying my name to their mortgage, the stacks of transfers, the way my mom had looked past my face and straight at my suitcase when she opened the door like I was a delivery driver dropping off a package. That image snapped me back. Instead of calling my dad, I opened my email and pulled up the thread with my financial advisor. I told her about the post, about how my family had been using my money for years while claiming they were barely getting by. And I asked one simple question. Was there anything else I needed to do to protect myself now that I had cut them off? She responded with a calm, detailed reply about documenting everything, saving copies of every transfer and bill, and making sure the bank and any relevant agencies had the full picture of who had actually been paying what. She mentioned that in situations like mine where one person is unofficially propping up a household that is also receiving certain benefits or claiming hardship, it can be appropriate to ask for things to be reviewed just to make sure everything is above board. I did not need a step-by-step manual. I just needed to know I was not crazy for thinking something was off. Over the next few weeks, while my dad kept posting vague complaints about ungrateful kids and this generation, envelopes started showing up at the house on their quiet cul-de-sac. I did not see them myself, but my mom's frantic texts told me enough. Did you talk to the bank? She wrote one morning. We got a letter about reassessing the loan. They want updated information. Another day, early on a Monday, came a barrage of messages. There is something from the IRS. I am freaking out. I thought you said everything was fine. Why are they asking questions? I had never said everything was fine. I had said I was done smoothing things over in the dark. The bank wanted updated documents for the mortgage. The utility companies wanted full payment instead of the partial ones I had been slipping in at the last second, like some invisible janitor cleaning up a mess no one else acknowledged. The comfortable fog they had been living in was thinning, and there was nothing left to hide behind except the reality of what they could actually afford. Ethan finally texted asking to meet at a coffee shop near my building. When he walked in, he looked smaller without the sarcasm to puff him up. Dark circles under his eyes, stubble he had clearly not had time to shave, a delivery bag slung over his shoulder. He dropped into the chair across from me and got straight to it. Dad needs to shut up online, he said, rubbing his face. Those posts are making everything worse. He is embarrassing himself and Mom and honestly me too. And I know you are mad, but some of this, the letters, the calls, you did something, right? I took a slow sip of coffee, letting him sit in discomfort for a second before I answered. What I did was stop pretending we were all being honest. I said, I talked to professionals. I made sure my name would not go down with a ship I was not steering. If that means some systems are finally noticing where the money has actually been coming from, that is not my fault. He stared at the table, then admitted he had signed up for more shifts, sold some of his old tech gear, moved his kids into a smaller room so he could take on a roommate and cut rent. It sucks, he said, voice low. But for the first time, I am actually seeing what stuff costs, like really seeing it. Groceries, gas, daycare. I did not get it before. I just knew if it got bad enough, someone would text you. Meanwhile, my mom was selling designer bags and home decor she had bragged about on social media, listing them on a marketplace with captions barely used when I knew exactly how often she had carried them to brunch. The new television my dad bought after his surgery, the one he justified as recovery entertainment, disappeared from the living room in my cousin's holiday photos, replaced by an old boxy set from the garage. Their truck was finally repossessed one gray morning after too many missed payments. The kind of scene they used to cluck their tongues at when it happened at a neighbor's house. Now it was their driveway, their sidewalk, their embarrassment as the tow truck hauled away a symbol of a lifestyle they could no longer fake. Through all of it, my dad kept my number unblocked, but he never once called to apologize or tell the truth. He just kept throwing little grenades online, vague posts about betrayal and ingratitude, hoping someone would pick them up and carry them to me so I would feel guilty enough to crawl back. He told anyone who would listen that his daughter had abandoned him for money and status, conveniently leaving out that most of the money had been flowing in the opposite direction for years. I did not respond publicly, did not jump into the comments to defend myself, did not write my own dramatic post with screenshots attached, even though the petty part of me desperately wanted to. I did not have to. I had my receipts. I had my advisor. I had my own credit finally starting to disentangle from theirs. And more importantly, I had distance. Every time I saw someone share his story about the cold daughter in London, or heard through the grapevine that he was holding court at the bar about what a disappointment I was, all I could think was that if they knew the real math, if they saw even one page of that spreadsheet, they would not be asking why I walked away. They would be asking how I managed to stay as long as I did. By the time Christmas rolled around again, the Miller house had turned into a different universe, and so had mine. I found the pieces in strange little ways. A tagged photo of my mom at a discount store instead of her usual boutique. A grainy picture of Ethan's kids in a small apartment instead of my parents' backyard. Comments from mutual friends asking if everything was okay. I didn't reach out. I focused on my job in San Diego, on building my portfolio, on decorating my condo one paycheck at a time. I bought a second-hand couch, a fake tree for the corner, and strung up cheap fairy lights that made the place look warmer than it had any right to feel. Then, one rainy Tuesday in December, someone knocked on my door. When I checked the peephole, my stomach dropped. It was my mom. She looked smaller somehow. No full face of makeup, no carefully styled hair, just a tired woman clutching a reusable grocery bag to her chest like a shield. I let her in, heart pounding. She stood in the middle of my little living room and turned in a slow circle, taking in the couch, the view, the tiny Christmas tree with 3 mismatched ornaments. I didn't know it looked like this, she said softly. I always pictured you in something bigger, fancier. I shrugged. This is what I can afford without paying for 2 households. She winced like the words physically hurt. Then she opened the bag and pulled out an envelope. Inside was a check. Not for 60,000, not even close, but it was something. It's from selling things, she said quickly, eyes shiny. Bags, some jewelry, that coffee table you hated. And I've been picking up extra shifts at the office. It's not much, but it's a start. I told Ethan we can't pretend it was all a misunderstanding anymore. For a second, I just stared at the check. It wasn't about the amount. It was about my mother who had spent years acting like my money grew on trees, standing in my small, very human-sized living room and admitting out loud that she'd treated me like an ATM. She sat down on the edge of the couch and started crying, not the manipulative, loud sobbing from the 3 a.m. FaceTime call. Quiet, broken little sounds. Your father still says you betrayed us. She said he tells everyone you turned on your family because you think you're better than us. But I can't keep saying it. Not after seeing those papers. Not after the bank letters. We did use you. I did. I sat next to her, leaving space between us. I'm not asking you to hate him, I said. I'm asking you to stop letting him rewrite what happened just so he doesn't have to feel guilty. She nodded, wiping her face. Ethan's working, she added. Like really working, driving late nights doing warehouse shifts. He moved into a smaller place. The kids share a room now, but at least it's a place he pays for himself. He wanted me to tell you, thank you for the spreadsheet. I actually laughed at that. A short surprised sound. I didn't make that for him, I said. I made it for me. She looked at me carefully. Do you think someday we could have a Christmas where you come over and it's just dinner? No money talk, no hidden bills, just us. My throat tightened. Maybe, I said. But that only happens if everyone in that house understands I am not their safety net anymore. If I come, it's because I want to, not because there's a payment due. She nodded again, stood up, and hugged me. A real hug this time, the kind I'd been chasing for years. When she left, I slipped the check into a drawer. I didn't cash it right away. I just needed to know that for once the flow of money was pointed in the other direction. As for my dad, the last thing I saw from him was another vague post about a family turning their backs. I muted him, then finally blocked his profile and his number. It felt less like slamming a door and more like closing a wound that refused to heal. That Christmas Eve, I sat alone on my couch, tree lights blinking, a cheap mug of hot chocolate in my hands. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel obligated to be anywhere else. No flights, no babysitting schedule, no emergency transfers, just quiet, just mine. Here's what I learned. Family doesn't stop being family just because you say no. The people who truly love you will eventually adjust to your boundaries. The ones who were only there for what you could provide will call you selfish the moment you stop bleeding for them. It hurts. It's lonely. But sometimes distance is the only way to stop drowning in someone else's bad decisions. So, let me ask you this. If the people draining your bank account and your sanity share your last name, would you keep paying the price just to be called loyal? Or would you walk away like I did and finally give yourself permission to be your own family first? Thanks so much for watching. More of my most gripping stories are already on your screen. Click one now and don't miss the best part. You will love it. See you in the next story.